Hello there, Michelle Shorts here for My Favourite Things. Today I have a nautical scene to share with you using Pig Time Fun. So let's get started. This is the Pig Time Fun set, it's absolutely adorable. And I have stamped a few of the images out onto smooth white cardstock with extreme black ink. I'm then going to colour the images with Copic markers. I'm doing very simple Copic colouring. I've kept the caps of the pens on my craft mat here so that you can see which shades I'm using if you're interested, but I'm very much going from darkest to lightest, and like I said, doing very simple Copic colouring here, just using a few shades. I do want my colour palette to be quite limited. There is quite a lot of colour in the background. So I'm going in with the darkest shades kind of on either side of this sailboat and then adding the lighter shade towards the middle. I'm also adding the blues onto the pig's necktie there and also the flag at the top of the boat. And then I do also colour in that little bow on his hat as well in blues. But because it's such a tiny area, I had to really lean over to make sure that I wasn't going outside the lines and my head completely got in the way. So I do apologise for that, but I'm doing the exact same thing as I'm doing here. So then for the wooden areas next to the sails, I'm using some brown shades. I originally thought that I would just use 2 brown shades, and so I'm going in with what would be my lightest shade here, and it does still end up the lightest shade, but then I felt that I didn't quite have enough kind of contrast between the shades, so I do go in with a darker shade and just add a small amount of that towards the bottom of that wood part there. I did go outside the lines a little bit, so I used the colourless blender to try and push that back in. And then for the sails, I'm focusing most of the colour towards the edges, and then I'm going to go in with the colourless blender again and just kind of blend that out to white so that it's lighter in the middle, and that kind of gives those sails a little bit of movement so that they're not completely flat. And then for the bottom of the boat here, I apologise that I missed out the cap on screen, but this is C5, and then I can go in with my lighter shades to blend that out. When I'm colouring in real life, as in not on a video, I do usually hold the caps of the Copic markers in my other hand, and that's what I did there. I just completely forgot that I was filming, so I apologise for that, but yeah, that was C5 at the beginning there. And then for the seagulls, I'm using some warm greys. I do go in afterwards with the W3, but I did miss that off camera, so I apologise for that as well. But here you can see that I've already coloured in the pig. I had stamped it, coloured it in, and then I decided that actually I think it was a little bit too dark, so I stamped it again, and then this is me colouring it for the second time. I ended up using the exact same shades that I did on the first pig. I actually liked how I coloured it in. I think I did quite nice shading on it, but I felt that it was just a little bit too dark, quite corally in colour. And so I wanted kind of less of these darker pinks and then more of the lighter pinks. So like I said, I'm just using the exact same shades but in kind of a different amount for each one. So I'm going in with more of the R00 like I'm doing here, and then I do blend that out with the R000. But they have got more of like a quite pink corally colour to the pigs. I'm sure I will end up using that other one. I still think he's really cute, but I felt that it might clash a little bit because I'm doing a sunset for the background, and I thought that the reds in that and the yellows might clash a little bit with those pinks, and I am happier with the second one. So once I've gone through all of the shades, I do go back in a little bit to add a little bit more darkness there on his face. And then I'm going in with the darkest shade there for his nose. And then I do just go back in a little bit for his ears as well. So then once I've finished colouring, I'm going to take the Pig Time Fun Dynamics. I'm just going to line those dies over the images, and then I can hold them down with some low tack tape and run that through my die cutting machine. And then I can just pop out the pieces. And then for these smaller pieces, I did add the tape completely over them, so I'm just going to remove that tape before I can remove the image from the die. So then moving on to the background, I have a panel of white cardstock here that's cut to 5 inches by 3 3/4 inches. I've added some tape across the top part so that I can mask off the bottom. And I'm going to add ink blending to this, but I'm going to do it in 3 sections so that I have the sky at the top, the ocean in the middle, and then sand at the bottom. So I'm starting off with the sky at the top, and I'm going to do like a sunset kind of look. I did think about just doing blues, but I think that like a sunset works really nicely with an ocean, because if you've got like a really nice bright blue, it's quite a nice contrast between them both. So I'm using Distress inks here for all of the ink blending and ink blending brushes. So for the sky, I started off with Squeeze Lemonade, and then I went up to Worn Lipstick at the top, and now I'm blending that out with Dried Marigold. And then I do go in with Mustard Seed. I felt that the Squeeze Lemonade was a little bit too light at the bottom there, so I'm kind of just going over that. And then I do go in with a little bit of Wild Honey as well to kind of add a bit more orange. And then I finish off by adding that Worn Lipstick again at the top. So then once I'm happy with that, I can remove some of that tape. I am going to keep the piece there at the bottom. And then the piece that I added initially, this white tape here, I'm going to place that back over so that I can add ink blending below, and it's not going to get on top of that sky piece. I'm then taking the Drifts and Hills stencil, and I'm going to work out where I want my sandbank to be so that I can kind of have a little bit of movement to the sand there at the bottom. And so once I've got that in place, I'm going to add in the ink blending for the ocean in the middle. I'm starting off with Mermaid Lagoon Distress ink, and then I go up to Prize Ribbon. I did try and add some Salty Ocean in the middle, but I think my ink pad might be quite dry. I struggled with that a little bit, so I ended up just going in with that Mermaid Lagoon and then adding some more Prize Ribbon at the top. I wasn't going to add so much darkness to it, but actually I quite liked it in the end. I'm then going to remove that stencil, and I'm going to clean it really well because I want to flip it over, and so that I can use that as a mask. So it took me a little while just to kind of make sure that that was lined up as best as I can. When I do take it off, I found that actually I didn't quite line it up perfectly, and I had kind of like a little white line. But as it turns out, when the sea actually hits sand, it does kind of froth up a bit, and so you get kind of like that white look anyway. So to be honest, I think it looked okay. So for the sand, I'm going in first with Antique Linen. And I want to blend this out towards the bottom so that it's quite a lot lighter at the bottom and have it darker at the top. So now I'm going in with Gathered Twigs, but I didn't want it to be too dark, so I am taking off quite a bit of that ink onto a scrap piece of paper, and then I can bring that onto the panel here, and that just helps to blend it out and also just means it's just that little bit lighter. And then I do go back in with the Antique Linen again and just try and sort of blend that out as much as I can and sort of want to, so that it's, like I said, still a bit lighter at the bottom. And then I can remove all of that tape, and then I've got my scene here on my panel. And like I said, I've got that kind of white line there, but actually I don't think it's too bad. I'm then taking the Friends with Fins dynamic set, and in that set there is 2 wave pieces. So it just cuts small, kind of, in this instance, a kind of small little wave into the panel so that I can pop the boat inside of it, and it's going to add some movement onto that card. So I'm just working out here where I want that to end up being cut, and then I can stick it down with tiny little pieces of low tack tape, and then I can run that through my die cutting machine. And like I said, this is just going to add a little bit of movement. I felt that if I added the boat just on top, it would look very flat. I could add in some like waves with a white gel pen or something like that, but since there is these dynamics, it works out really nicely that I could add that inside. So I've stamped my sentiment there from the Pig Time Fun stamp set at the bottom with some more extreme black ink. And then I've added some thin foam tape onto the top of the boat here. And then I can pop that inside of that wave. I just want to bring in the pig here so that I can make sure that both of those images are kind of going to be centered inside of the panel and that there's the same amount of gap either side. And then once I'm happy with the placement, I can press that down. I'm then going to add some more thin foam tape onto the back of the panel, and I'm going to adhere it down onto an A2 size white card base. So that's a finished size of 4¼ inches by 5½ inches. I'm then adding the seagulls on top, again with some more thin foam tape. And then I've just placed the pig on top so that I can see where he's going to be, and then add some kind of detail onto this sand area. I wanted it to look like it is sand basically and not just completely flat. Obviously sand does have some texture to it, so I'm kind of dabbing in Copic markers here. I used E55, E53 and E50. I'll be honest with you, I think I added a bit too much of these dots here. Like I said, I did want some texture to it, but I think I went a little bit too far. I think I should have just added some underneath where the pig was going to stand and then just a few kind of bits elsewhere. I think I just went a bit too far with it. I think it looks okay, but in an ideal world I probably would have added less. So then I'm just going to pop the pig on there with some more thin foam tape. And then for his hat, I didn't really want that kind of white area in between the hat and his head. So I'm just cutting that off with some scissors here. Just trying to get it as close to the stamped line as possible. And then I'm just going to pop that on his head. And I do think that looks quite nice without that white line, but it would look fine either way, I think. I'm then going in with a 05 white jelly roll pen and just adding some dots onto the sand. And I do think that helps a little bit. I know that I wasn't particularly happy with all of the dots, but once I added some white on, it did look a little bit better, I think, and just added kind of like some kind of highlights and sort of glints to it. I did think about adding some white lines so it would be reflections on the ocean from the kind of like the sun sort of setting. I think that would look really nice, but once I added those dots for the sand and I felt like I messed up a little bit, I then didn't want to chance messing up the card even further by adding those kind of reflection lines, but I do think it would have looked quite nice. Otherwise, I'm just adding some highlights onto the images here with a 08 white jelly roll pen. And then to finish off, I can add some crystal glaze onto his nose, and once that dries, it's going to dry nice and clear and just add a little bit of shine to it. So that's the card finished for today. I hope you've enjoyed watching. Links to the products that I used will be listed in the description bar here on YouTube. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.